The village in it with a map and a plan. No place too tiny for this determined man. Crossing the counties one by one, you'll see in every English corner a bit of history.
Welcome back to Rushcliffe again, everybody. Now, as we know from my travels around the country, there are several pubs in England which have a lot of history to speak of. There's probably, though, none more so than this pub you can see right behind me. That is the Marquis of Granby, and it's the original Marquis of Granby as well. You can find it in the village and the parish of Granby. Granby, Granny's Farm. Sticking with villages in the Vale of Belvoir, today we're in Granby, just to the south of the A52 in eastern Rushcliffe. The parish includes the hamlet of Sutton, which is often referred to as Sutton cum Granby. The village stands near the source of the River Devon, close to the course of the Grantham Canal, and a stone's throw away from the boundary with Leicestershire. Granby appears in the Domesday Book with 99 households, a large number for that period. It's already had a church and 2 mills back then. The lord of the manor was Robert de Oyley, who had connections with 127 other places, mainly in the South Midlands, although I believe this is the first time we've met him. He could well become another channel favourite by the time we're done, who knows. Later, the manor belonged to the Duke of Rutland, and/or the Marquis of Granby. Yep, it's this village where the original title, Marquis of Granby, originated. Many a pub across the nation has that name, and here in Granby, we'll see what's believed to be the first one to adopt it. The pub is the standout feature therefore, but there's more. There used to be another pub called the Boot and Shoe, but that's now closed. We'll be seeing the building though, along with a former school and All Saints Parish Church, right in the heart of it all. We'll also talk a little bit about the Faulks family and what happened to the village school. There's also some interesting history to talk about as regards Sutton. There's a lot here then, so let's get cracking. We begin with the drive through the hamlet of Sutton between Granby and Elton on the Hill. Sometimes known as Sutton cum Granby or Sutton in the Vale, it has a population somewhere in the region of 60. The hamlet has no shops, but here there are some businesses. They include a builder's, a repair garage, and a few farms. The manor of Sutton, along with at least 5 others in Nottinghamshire, was held in the 1330s by Thomas de Furnivall the Elder. By 1520, Sutton belonged to Sir John Savage. His son, also John, was a murderer, responsible for the death of Sir John Pouncefort. Henry VIII pardoned him provided that he paid the sum of £4,000 to expiate his crime. As a result, the land passed to the Manners family, and they were created Dukes of Rutland. This title has been passed down through the family ever since. Much of the village and many of the farms were still, until the 1920s, part of the Rutlands estate, centred on Belvoir Castle. You can see that, by the way, on the eastern skyline from here. Keep the Manners family in mind, they'll become more important in Granby. Sutton used to have a castle of its own. It lay halfway between the village and Granby, where there later stood a windmill that was pulled down in 1879. All that remains of either structure are earthworks, surrounded by a moat. Sutton is semi-famous for a battle in the English Civil War, orchestrated by Oliver Cromwell. Human remains have been found from that battle as recently as the 1960s. During World War II, Sutton received evacuees from Nottingham and London. Electricity arrived in 1948 and mains water in 1956. There's never been a pub in Sutton, mainly due to it being a predominantly abstinent Methodist community. The village pump on the green and Highfield farmhouse are its only Grade 2 listed buildings. Now in Granby, we start at the pub, and since 2015 this has been the only one here. This is the Marquis of Granby, believed to be the very first public house in the country to bear that name. It dates back to 1760 and serves a range of real ales and has won awards for the quality of its beer. The Marquis of Granby is a courtesy title used by the Duke of Rutland's eldest son. The most famous Marquis was General John Manners, who lived in the 18th century. He distinguished himself in the 7 Years' War and later entered politics. He died in 1770 before his father and thus never became Duke of Rutland. The Marquis of Granby is much more than just a pub now. It's too small to sustain a typical pub food operation, but that gave its owners an idea. Recently, its formerly unused kitchen was converted into a small grocery and coffee shop to support the local community. There is currently no other shop in either Granby or any of the surrounding villages. It is, after all, a 9-mile round trip to the nearest supermarket, and transport links are limited in the area. The shop is called Dragon Street Stores and Coffee Shop. Now, there can be no denying that the Marquis of Granby is the most well-known landmark in this village. But it's more than just a one-trick pony, is Granby. We're going to take a walk around it now. It's a lovely little circular route, this. I love villages like this. You can be around them pretty quickly, and all the landmarks are clustered together. Next, we're going to head up this road here, which leads towards an old Methodist chapel. Let's have a walk around now. Granby used to have a Wesleyan Methodist chapel, and it still stands. This was built at some point before 1881. However, the Methodist congregation dwindled away and the chapel was converted to a private residence in around 2002. As mentioned in Sutton, this was a pretty strong area for nonconformism. There was a small primitive chapel in Sutton erected in 1860. It still stands too, but it's been closed for worship since 1995. A name that's synonymous with Granby would be Faulks. To explain why, we have to go back to 1764 when the population here started to increase. Back then, as many as 65 families lived in Granby and Sutton combined. Facilities were limited. There was no meeting house in the parish, and although the school was not endowed, the Duke of Rutland allowed £4 a year towards the support of a schoolmaster. There were no hospitals or almshouses either, and the only other charitable donation was £5 paid to poor widows. The capital sum had been left nearly 40 years previously by a man named Richard Faulks. And that water pump you've just seen is in the driveway of this house here, which is actually called the Water Pump. Talk about an ideal name. There's another house behind the camera that's got an ideal name as well. It's called Rutland Cottage. There it is. It's the one on the end there. This one, that's called Rutland Cottage, obviously in reference to the Dukes of Rutland. Also on that corner you can see a building there. We're heading for that. That's the old Boot and Shoe. Now, as we know, the Marquis of Granby is the only pub here today, but a decade ago there were two. This is the former Boot and Shoe Inn, which closed in 2015. It's now a private residence. Its original wooden beams, lintel fireplace and some historic features remain today. Although it was a pub, there's some records that show it might have been a multi-use building or partially residential, because it was subdivided in some form between 1920 and 1935. The church is next. This is dedicated to All Saints and was founded by Ralph Danecourt in 1155. After the dissolution of the monasteries, the patronage of the church passed to Queen Mary and King Philip of Spain, and then to Queen Elizabeth before finally coming to John Manners. Its current patron is the Bishop of Southwell. This church has undergone several restoration projects, including in 1777 when it was reduced in size and the tower was repaired. The tower's walls have an immense thickness, and this suggests it may once have been used as a stronghold. It's almost certain to be the oldest part of the church. It had to be reduced thanks to it being struck by lightning. Roughly, only 5 feet of the original tower remains today. In 1888, a partial restoration was carried out which saw the replacement of its terracotta east window with a stone. The Duke of Rutland contributed £500 to that. Fragments of the original terracotta east window are kept in the chancel. Domesday records also mention a second church in Sutton dedicated to St Ethelburga, but that has long since disappeared. Mind you, the field in which it stood is still called Holy Field today. The churchyard contains some very finely inscribed headstones, including 22 examples inscribed with the words Beaver Angels. The churchyard was closed to burials in 1897 and replaced by the parish cemetery on Sutton Lane. Here's the village hall. This was originally built in 1871 as a school, and it's now owned and managed by the parish council. It has 2 function rooms, a modern kitchen and toilet facilities. The building is licensed for 100 people standing or 50 people seated. Recently, the building has been the subject of a Raise the Roof campaign to raise funds for repairs, particularly to its roof, hence the name. Granby-cum-Sutton Parish Council used a grant from the big lottery fund to install adult outdoor exercise equipment behind the village hall in the summer of 2017. And this green has the village sign which you've just seen. This was erected in 2012 by Julie Powell, a resident of Granby. So says the little plaque underneath it. It's a beautiful, beautiful sign. Well done, Julie. So we are on the green. Just turn the camera around here. Look at these beautiful autumn colours, by the way. Absolutely fantastic. There's a house up there called October Cottage, by the way. It's ideal for the time of year, isn't it? And you can see we've made it all the way around the route because the Marquis of Granby is over there. Beautiful place is Granby. I've thoroughly enjoyed my time here. And that's it, folks. What a great little village Granby is, and it's not every day you come across a place with so much of interest in such a small space. Shall we carry on in the same way tomorrow? I reckon that's a great idea. Just down the road is the next village, one with links to a gypsum works and the RAF. See you there. Now, just before I go, remember, this video is part of a huge project to visit every civil parish in England. That's more than 10,000. These routes are pre-planned, and due to time constraints, I can't cover every detail or walk down every street. Please don't complain if this video missed something out. I pronounce names how I choose to. I am very aware that local dialect may vary, and I don't take kindly to criticism about this. You've been warned. It's impossible to know everything too. If this video was terrible, make your own. If you're a regular watcher of The Village Idiot, you're not the only one. If you've got a small business, why not use my videos to advertise it? Leave a comment below if you're interested. And finally, thanks for watching this episode, everybody. Give us a like and a subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode, and share it with your friends and relatives. It all helps to keep this mission going. Until next time, I've been Andy, also known as The Village Idiot, and I'm out.